Good evening and welcome to episode 30 of the Jacksonian. As I am yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and I have with me is the co-host of Locked On Wolfpack, the one and only himself, Grayson Boone, as we will be going over the Cinderella run of the NC State Wolfpack and if it's similar to the 1983 National Championship season. And we'll be going over as to whether the football program can make a Cinderella run of their own in 2024. And let me tell you, folks, it's going to be a wild ride. How you doing tonight, man?
Jackson, I've been floating for probably about 3 weeks now. I don't know how to describe to you what this ride has been like for all of NC State fans. It doesn't matter how many pictures we see of Keats holding the trophies or how many times we see NC State on the bracket in the Final Four. None of us can really believe what we are witnessing. And I think that makes it that much sweeter. But to answer your actual question, I am phenomenal. Life is fantastic right now.
Well, I'm glad it is, man. And I tell you what, though, this guy's got an awesome hat. I mean, it kind of looks like the Disney version of the Big Bad Wolf.
A
Like, I
little
love
bit,
it.
yeah, a little bit. Same vibes.
I love it, man. It's just awesome. So, memo to me, note to self: get a hat that looks like that.
Hey man, it's a great time to get in on your NC State merch. There's never been a better time, possibly ever.
That's for sure. And before we start the show, would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yep. So my name is Grayson Boone. I'm a co-host of Locked On Wolfpack. Myself and my partner Kenton Gibbs, who is a former Wolfpack defensive tackle. He played on the football team way back when in 2014. We do a daily podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. We cover virtually everything NC State related, but of course the main topics are usually always going to be football, basketball, and I like to sprinkle in a little baseball every now and then because I am a baseball guy. But every single day, Monday to Friday, we're on there chatting about NC State things. Never expected to be chatting about what we're currently talking about in the Cinderella run, but I've been doing sports media with Locked On for I think about a year now. I joined on I think it was like the first week of March Madness last year. So I've been doing this for about a year now. It's been a crazy run. I've met a lot of cool people in the sports media industry, and I love it. Can't get enough of it.
Well, we're glad to see that you're a part of Locked On Wolfpack and part of the Locked On Network because you bring the go-to knowledge on NC State sports.
I try, man. I've been an NC State fan my entire life, and Kenton's really only known NC State since like 2012, but I go back even further than that. NC State is everything to me, and I have other favorite sports teams. Like I'm a Red Sox fan, so I've experienced a little bit of success there, but nothing has ever meant more to me than seeing NC State succeed on this level.
Well, I know one thing's for sure. I bet it was fun seeing the Red Sox in that drought when you were a little boy in 04. And
Oh yeah.
I
Stayed up
bet
all night. I was in third grade. I think I skipped school the next day because my dad let me.
nice. That is so awesome. And it's gonna be a lot of fun, discussing about the Tom O'Brien era and the Dave Doreen era with Kenton Gibbs, I bet.
Yeah, I get a lot of cool inside knowledge that I guess maybe the average NC State fan doesn't have access to because Kenton lived it. I mean, he was in Coach Dave Doran's first recruiting class at NC State, which is very cool. So I get I'm fortunate to hear a lot of the stories from Kenton.
Well, I'll definitely be making sure to ask him about it very soon for sure. But
Absolutely.
I will ask you though, NC State, was out of the bubble watch, obviously, going into the first round of the ACC tournament. They're playing Louisville. They have lost 7 of the last 9 games of the regular season. What was the mindset going on in March 12th?
It was bleak. I'll be completely honest. It was bleak. And a lot of us felt like this could be the last game or so that we see Kevin Keats coaching the Wolfpack. I mean, his tenure up until this point, it was up and down. Of course, he had to kind of venture through the cloud that was left behind of the former coach and Mark Gottfried. But he kind of weathered the storm, got through it. We were in the NCAA tournament last year with a first round exit at the hands of Creighton. But the expectation for this team was you had to make it back to March Madness. And they were about to fall short. They were on the 1 yard line on defense. The other team was about to score. They were very close to this being, I guess, a disaster season. And a lot of us feel that Kevin Keatts was, you talk about being tied with Louisville in the opening game of the ACC tournament with about 4.5 minutes left. Coach Keatts was probably about 4.5 minutes from being fired. If the team fell apart and we lose to Louisville, he's probably no more at NC State. So it is that crazy of a turnaround. And the mindset coming into this tournament for a lot of State fans was like, let's just play for pride. Show us something. Don't go out on a sour note. I can tell you this with 100% confidence. None of us, not a single person wearing red and white expected to be where we are now.
Yeah, and we saw them beat Louisville, of course, and then we see them beating Syracuse. Shout out to Locked On Syracuse, Jackson Holzer. Sorry about that. But nobody really thought, oh, this team's gonna make a Cinderella run. But I couldn't help but feel maybe the reality is setting in that NC State can really surprise everybody in the ACC tournament after they beat Duke in the quarterfinals. But then,
go ahead.
But then we see that game-tying shot against Virginia in the semifinals. I was like, oh, man, unbelievable. Yeah. But what was your mindset? Don't do that.
I think there's even a t-shirt made of that moment now. It's being referred to as the shot that started it all. And it very, very much was the butterfly effect to like the nth degree. It was the ultimate butterfly effect because Virginia had Isaac McNeely on the free throw line. I believe he's one of, if not their best free throw shooter. Misses that free throw, gives us one shot to march down the floor and tie it. And then the most improbable bank shot I think I've ever seen. Michael O'Connell hits it. They go to overtime. They really rallied it. You could tell they rallied around that shot. They beat Virginia in overtime. They go on to play UNC the next day in the championship. They win that one too. And then off it went. But that moment, that shot from Michael O'Connell, you can probably pinpoint the rest of this run began because of that moment.
Oof. It was an awesome moment witnessing that. And then after we see NC State beating Virginia, we see them beat North Carolina in the ACC tournament, and they win it for the first time since the Jimmy Valvino era from 1987.
Yeah.
How did that feel witnessing that in person?
I'll tell you what. I mean, NC State, it was kind of I guess it was a running joke, but we were the butt of the joke. Up until beating UNC in that championship game, we were the only Power 5 school in, I think it was like 32 years, 3+ decades, that had not won a conference championship in either football, basketball, or baseball. One of one, the only P5 school left. And so not only to break that curse, we're pretty much referring to it as a curse, not only to break that curse, but to do it against your arch rival in UNC. It makes it that much sweeter. You go 0-2 against them in the regular season, and the last time we had played them before the ACC tournament was in Chapel Hill. We felt like we gave ourselves a great shot to win it and then really crumbled there in the second half and let it get away. The team looked extremely confident coming into that game. From tip-off, you could tell that the energy was much different than the previous two times that they had played them. And to win the ACC championship in that fashion, breaking the curse, but not only that, you mentioned to start this thing off, we were not going to be in March Madness unless you go five games in 5 days, and you have to win the whole tournament just to get into the bigger tournament. So it was a complete whirlwind. Being an NC State fan my whole life and this championship drought, I always said, if NC State's playing for a championship of any sort, I have to be there. So I made the drive all the way up to DC. Wouldn't change a single second of it for the entire world. I will cherish that moment as long as I live. It was absolutely incredible.
I'm glad you got to witness history in the making in person. That must have felt amazing, man.
Still
That's
does.
awesome. There we go. And who knows? Maybe we'll see NC State win the ACC for the first time since 1979 from the Bo Ryan eras in
In
college
football,
football.
I tell you what, man, there is more buzz around this upcoming football season for NC State than I think maybe there ever has been. The overhaul we did in the transfer portal, the effort with NIL coming into this offseason was enormous. And it is in large part why they're able to overhaul a team in the way that they did. There is so much excitement, not just around basketball, but also for football. Funny enough, of course, the Final Four game is on Saturday, but the football spring game is also on Saturday. So a lot of folks are going to have to do some double duty. I think the spring game is earlier. I think it's 2 p.m. So they won't have to choose, but there's going to be it will be a Wolfpack weekend to say the least.
Oh man, I didn't even know that, but I learned something new. That's pretty amazing there. But speaking of the March Madness run, now I know I personally had them going as far as the Sweet 16, but what did you think of the historic run? They're in their first Final Four since 1983, the magnificent national title from Jimmy Valvino. He's looking for someone to hug after that celebratory victory. And now you see the 2024 reboot of NC State. What's it like? Like what are the best moments from it?
It's to answer your question, every single moment is the best moment. It's so hard to describe, even having, I guess, 72 hours to chew on it since we've advanced into the Final Four, still doesn't feel real. I mean, I see the commercials and I see the brackets and all the tweets and the Final Four logo with NC State merch. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is actually happening. Like what world am I on right now? But it's been so incredible. Just talked about having to win the ACC championship to even get in, and then let alone you win the subsequent 4 games after that. It's remarkable, and perhaps a little bit of bracket luck. I mean, you play a tough Texas Tech team and you look dominant in the first round. And the bracket luck I was referring to is possibly seeing Oakland instead of Kentucky in the second round. But Oakland, I mean, they deserve to get where they got because they took it to Kentucky, and Jack Golke kind of became the early darling for the NCAA tournament before DJ Burns firmly snatched that away from him. And then, having to play a tough Marquette team and then a tough Duke team that we had to also beat in the ACC tournament. It is the run of a lifetime. It is an absolute magical month of March for NC State fans. And to get back to the Final Four for the first time since the last team in our school's history to win it all, it's truly remarkable. And hearing all the stories from the people that were students back in 83 or family members that were around back then to witness it, that for my entire life, that's all I've had to go off of. And so living here now in 2024 and going through this myself, I have chills right now talking about it because it is truly unbelievable.
Well, I got a feeling a lot of NC State Nation is playing happy, happy, joy, joy. That's for sure.
For sure.
But I was thinking about this stat. So now the NC State's in the Final Four. They are the 6th, 11th seed in the Final Four ever.
Right.
But all the 11th seeds that have been in the Final Four have never gone to the national title.
Right.
Can we see another historic landmark drought end this Saturday?
I think you absolutely can. I mean, if this team hasn't proved it enough, there is nothing that is impossible. And I had tweeted the other day from our Locked on Wolfpack Twitter account, the odds of this team standing where they currently stand was like less than 1/100th of 1%, which is essentially the impossible. They have completed the impossible. And, Purdue, they present quite the challenge. Of course, everyone knows what Zach Edey is, and the rest of the Purdue team is nothing to sneeze at as well. They can shoot it just about as well as anyone else in the country. So it will be a tough task, but there just feels like there's nothing that can stand in the way of NC State right now. It doesn't matter early foul trouble, cold shooting. It doesn't matter. They're just going to find a way to win. So we've made it a point to not have any predictions. We've just said we're along for the ride. It's kind of like a superstitious thing. So I'll stick with that, but you absolutely can see it happen on Saturday.
Well, it'd be fun to see North Carolina State and Alabama play one another in the Natty, because
Yeah,
it would be tied for the. I think it's the most seeded game in history of national titles. Because the last I checked, it was 8 seed Kentucky and 7 seed Connecticut for 2014.
right.
So that ties it up.
Yeah, funny enough, you mentioned that. When NC State beat Duke on Sunday, it was an 11 versus 4. I've come to find out that matchup had actually never happened in the history of the tournament before. So you would be dead on. If NC State plays Alabama in the national title, it'd be the first time an 11 ever played a 4 in the whole thing.
Yeah, it would be sweet if that happened. That would be some pretty good history.
No doubt.
Because but it would also reinforce the statement that Purdue can't win the big one as well.
Yeah, you got to figure that there is a little bit of pressure for Purdue, especially after last year losing to the 16 seed and Fairleigh Dickinson. They're looking to make a statement, and they feel like they have the team to do it. Their fan base is rallying behind that. Matt Painter gets them to the Final Four finally after so many years of knocking on the door but not being able to answer it. So Purdue's going to be hungry. There's no doubt about it, and it feels like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object in every sense of the imagination here.
True. That would be an amazing story right there, where it's like 4 weeks ago, nobody even had you on the bubble watch.
Right.
Nobody had you making it to March Madness, and then you make it to the Natty. That would be an incredible 30 for 30 right there.
Yeah, we've been joking about this on Locked on Wolfpack. We are on the current trajectory to have a 30 for 30 made about outdoing your previous 30 for 30. That just saying that out loud is truly encapsulating how crazy all of this is right now.
That is true. And I've been thinking about this. What are the similarities that you've noticed from that 83 national title team of NC State and the 2024 NC State team?
Well, you certainly look at the postseason run in totality. Both teams, well, there is a little bit of chatter that the 83 team didn't have to win the ACC tournament, although if you speak to anyone on that team, they said that they did have to win it. So you have that one. You have to win the ACC tournament to even get into the NCAA tournament. And then some of the similarities in a sense of you had to run through Virginia, you had to run through North Carolina, two of the most historic teams in the ACC who have, they've been here and done that. So they know how to win late in the postseason because they have all the hardware to show for it. So both teams had to do that. I think when you're looking at this weekend, NC State having to go against Zach Edey, way back in 83, NC State had to face formidable big men and Ralph Sampson and Hakeem Olajuwon. So there is a parallel there. But I think something that's so interesting about the 2024 run is it's almost more different than it is similar. And this team is really trying to write their own storybook ending. They're trying to make their own history. And everyone, of course, is going to talk about 83. It's the last time NC State's been in the Final Four. And a lot of the run is eerily, like weirdly similar to even pull off such a thing. So I think there are a lot of similarities, but I think we're really coming to embrace the differences between the two.
Well, it's going to be amazing to see what happens. But, I've been thinking about 2 guys that have benefited from this magical run, DJ Burns and DJ Horne.
Yeah.
Where will we see them in the NBA draft?
It's tough to tell because obviously coming into this postseason, both of them were also off of that radar, like you referenced. I'd have to imagine that the NBA prospects will be maybe few and far between. It's hard to tell. And funny enough, we've been hearing a lot about DJ Burns getting potential interest from the NFL because of his size and his footwork and his ability to maybe play on an offensive or defensive line. But I think these two are obviously good enough at basketball that they will play professionally somewhere. I would expect that to probably be overseas, but who knows, man? I mean, if DJ Burns continues to play basketball on a tear like he is right now, 29 points against Duke and wasn't as effective against Marquette, but he had 7 assists. He can do a little bit of everything. So you might see an NBA team want to take a chance on a guy like that. And for DJ Horne, another guy just started off the radar, but he has been one of the most instrumental pieces to this run and what he can give you offensively. He's become such a unique scorer for this team that, you feel like any team could take a chance on a guy like that. Anyone that can fill it up like he can. Yeah, of course you're going to get looks in some way, shape, or form, but I don't know if the NBA prospects will be super overwhelming for the two of them, but they're certainly getting a whole lot of attention. Funny enough, I think it was last night, the two of them had a meet and greet at a local Applebee's in Raleigh, and the line was like 2 miles long. And I say 2 miles, I'm not even exaggerating. If you look it up on social media, the line completely wrapped around the block and then some, just for people to come in and see these two guys right now. So, I mean, they I'm sure feel like they're on top of the world. DJ Burns is a rock star, and he kind of had shades of this last year, but nowhere near to be on the level that he's on now. And he's everywhere. I mean, he was on Scott Van Pelt's show last night. That's about as big as it gets. So, I'm sure they're also enjoying every moment of this run, but NC State fans, we can't believe how much national attention that our guys are getting right now.
Well, and I know when NC State and Oakland were playing, I know RG3 was praising DJ Burns as well, so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been cool to see the progression of media personalities start to really pay attention to DJ Burns. And DJ Burns is such an easy guy to pay attention to because, of course, he is a very large frame, but he's very skilled at what he does. And his footwork is incredible for a guy that big. And he can, like I said, he can beat you in a multitude of ways. He can dish it out if he's getting double teamed, or he can back you down from the 3-point line and continue to score on you all night. So it's been really cool to see celebrities start to pay attention. And Russell Wilson, who's a famous alum of NC State, he's been tweeting throughout all of this. And it's just been so cool to watch the world watch DJ Burns because we've done it very closely here for the last 2 years.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool to see Russell Wilson giving a shout out. And something I always hate is that people tend to forget that Russell Wilson was at NC State from 2008 to 2010. Like they only remember the 2011 Wisconsin season where they won the Big Ten against Michigan State, lost to the Rose Bowl. But I don't ever hear people talk about how NC State went from 2-6 to 6-6 in 2008, and then ended a horrible 2009 season with a bang against a North Carolina with a top-notch victory against them, which set up momentum for 2010, where they won against West Virginia. And I believe, and they lost to Maryland in the ACC Atlantic division battle because Florida State was sitting there watching, high-fiving one another after that game.
That Maryland loss still haunts us to this day, and I'll let you in on some inside NC State things. So it's since been killed because Kevin Keatts has broken the curse and we won a conference championship. But there was a saying of NC State stuff. I'll call it stuff, but there's an asterisk on stuff because it's another S word that I'm not going to say on here. But NC State stuff, we refer it to as it's a comedy of events that has happened to our school in a multitude of sports that you get so close to winning something, and then all of a sudden the world falls apart and NC State loses. That Maryland loss way back when with Russell Wilson, that was like near the top of the list of NC State stuff. We felt like we completely fumbled a massive opportunity to get into that ACC title game. So it's it's funny to hear that brought up now because we very often still think about that game and what could have been for Russell Wilson at State.
Well, I'm sorry you had to relive that again.
No.
I'm just like making sure I know my stuff about NC State.
You do. You sure do. But, last thing on Russell Wilson, too. NC State fans get kind of defensive sometimes because a lot of times UNC fans will kind of poke fun at us and say, well, Russell Wilson didn't even go to State. He went to Wisconsin. And that's where we get very defensive. And if you ask Russell Wilson, he'll tell you he has 2 alma maters, but he always makes sure to give NC State love. And he was the keynote speaker at graduation here a couple years ago. He tweets about it every now and then. Sometimes you'll hear NFL clips of him on the sideline where maybe he's playing in Carolina against the Panthers and he'll say something NC State related. So we're a very proud fan base. We're very proud of all of our alums in pro sports. And so Russell Wilson is one that we hold to, he's very high up in NC State love.
Well, and I know that, some people have forgotten that he was a 2-sport athlete, that he not only played college football, but he was a top-notch baseball player as well. He was originally going to go to the MLB instead of the NFL, but then he had like a change of heart and decided, you know what, I'm going to try this NFL thing out.
Well, I won't air out all of that, but funny enough,
that's okay.
That became a point of contention actually for Russ here at NC State. And there may or may not have been a certain coach that would not let him play baseball any longer. And that basically caused a rift. And that is why he left and went to Wisconsin. But yes, he did play baseball at NC State. He was a 2-sport athlete. And that's another something that, we really uphold that. And we cherish that time in NC State history that he was here and he did it in 2 different sports, which is really cool to see.
Yeah. But, to your point, you talked about the near misses that NC State football has had.
Oh, yeah.
One of them, I have a feeling, was that Friday night matchup against Louisville.
Yep. You hit the nail on the head.
And that, unfortunately, got you coming up short of that second spot in the ACC title game. But I see that the CW curse did not hit NC State.
Oh, it was quite the opposite. The NC State football team loves playing on the CW. I believe we're undefeated on the CW. We want all of our games to be on the CW. But yeah, that Louisville loss there at the end of September, that ended up being what ultimately kept us out of the ACC championship game. And it was very much a situation where you realize that after the fact, because it was a very painful loss, a game that you really should have won. You had multiple opportunities to win it. And I mean, that was also the point of the season where Brennan Armstrong had really struggled leading the offense. The quarterback play and really the offense in totality was just not up to par. And so you look back at that game, and I think it was an early second half interception that basically ended up being the nail in the coffin in that one. And yeah, but I mean, before NC State stuff had ended, that was just another one to add into the list of missed opportunities.
Yeah, and that Duke loss, that was when they had all their guys healthy, Bradley Leonard and all those guys. Like, oh man, that 24-3 loss, that's painful.
That one was rough. And so that was actually the second game. We had made a quarterback switch after that Louisville loss, oddly enough. And our rising sophomore, supposed to be superstar, and MJ Morris, that was his second game, first ever road game for him. And again, the offense at that point in the season was just not clicking virtually at all. And the game really got away from us. I thought Duke had a fantastic game plan against NC State, and they executed it, and they kicked our butts. There's really no 2 ways about it. And I mean, obviously you see the rest of the schedule there. We did not lose again. And that Duke game, in the locker room, and our linebacker, Peyton Wilson, who's getting a lot of buzz right now before the NFL draft, he was fired up. And he said, he even apologized to NC State fans saying, you deserve better than this. And we're going to work our tails off to make sure that we give that to you. And Coach Dorn was really talking about that loss being a turning point in the season. And they kind of revamped the offense and took out everything that was inefficient and just ran with the basics. They ran to the strengths of what the guys were out there doing. And it really paid off. Obviously, you see a 5-game win streak to end the season, and that is a big piece of why the momentum has really ramped up here coming into the 24 season.
Well, I will say that I'm glad they didn't put NC State Virginia Tech on Thursday night, because like if they did, that would have put the Wolfpack in huge trouble.
It's funny. So I was at that game as well in Blacksburg. It's the first time I had ever gone to see a game at Virginia Tech. The atmosphere everyone hears about is electric, but it is every bit of that. It is an awesome place to see a football game. And we know how dangerous Virginia Tech can be on a Thursday night. You got Enter Sandman going, and the crowd is insane. So perhaps we did dodge a bullet there, being not a Thursday game. It was a Saturday game, but that was another fun game to witness there in person.
Well, and I'm glad to hear that the Pop-Tarts Bowl didn't kill that momentum you guys have for 2024.
Yeah, I mean that was certainly a disappointing loss, and a 10-win season for NC State football is something that has eluded us since the days of Phillip Rivers, and so we've desperately tried to get back to that mark. It's a mark that we want to hit so that we can raise the floor of the program. And winning, some people don't exactly count bowl wins toward the regular season, but we wanted that 10th win on the season, and it just became a point of we were a little bit of a different team. Peyton Wilson obviously was our best defensive player. He was the best defensive player in the entire country, and his hardware would prove that to you. He did not suit up for that game, understandably so. There's really no one that questioned that at all. And so the defense was much different. And I mean, it is purely hypothetical to say, well, if we had Peyton, maybe, things would have gone differently. We just don't know. But the game, it was a bit sour, but I think that sour feeling really was another reason it kind of ramped up the expectations for this coming season. And shortly actually, before that game, we had already picked up quite a few very exciting transfers from the portal. And so the buzz was kind of already going, and winning the bowl game at that point kind of felt like a bonus. And so not being able to pull it off was certainly disappointing. We wanted to eat that live Pop-Tart. And Dave Dorn was talking about he could wash it down with some bourbon, and we would have killed to see the pictures and videos of that. So we do feel robbed of that moment, but sour loss, but it didn't derail the train that is the hype for this coming year.
Well, I just hope that NC State can have a better year in 2024 for sure. That would be pretty cool. So we're looking at the schedule. I see for the first conference game, they got to go to Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the last time, for those that are tuning into this show, the last time NC State beat Clemson at Clemson was 2002 in the Tommy Bowden era.
It's been a long time, probably too long. And, it was 2 years ago when we went down to Death Valley with Devin Leary, and that was supposed to be the year for NC State. That was supposed to be our best team ever. And I think it might have been just the week after is when he suffered that injury against Florida State that ended his career at NC State. We felt like that was our shot to go down and take out Clemson in Death Valley. Ultimately came up short. And so coming into this season with, again, supposedly your best team ever, we are so excited to go down there and really see what we got. We want to see if we can shock not only Clemson, but at that point, it might be the entire country, because winning at Clemson is not an easy task for anyone. And there's a reason that very few teams have been able to go down there and pull that off. I know Florida State did it just last year on their special season, but outside of that, recently, there hasn't been very many teams that can go down there and come out with a win. So NC State is really we are revved up for that one. We have been thinking about going to Clemson for probably like 2 years now. We want to go down there really badly and pick up that win.
That would be historic. I'm ready to see that happen. I mean, I would like to see some history happen, but we also see the Duke Mayo's Classic between NC State and Tennessee. That looks like it's going to be a great game. Should be way better than the 2012 Chick-fil-A kickoff.
Oh, man. See that? Okay, so there's another one. That was on the list of NC State stuff. It's just one of these painful losses that we talk about for a long time. But no, I mean, that game down in Charlotte, it's going to be electric. And Tennessee, obviously, their new quarterback with Nico. I don't want to butcher his last name, so I'll just leave it at Nico. He's supposed to be the real deal. Tennessee has a lot of talent coming in that's supposed to be the real deal. So they pose as quite a threat, just 2 weeks into the season for NC State, what they hope to be a trip to the CFP. And so, I do think there is an element that losing to Tennessee there, it doesn't derail your schedule at all. But beating Tennessee on that scale, that will set the table for the rest of the season. So that's another one. I mean, two of arguably your biggest games are right there in the month of September. Some fans feel a little apprehensive about that. They're a little nervous about that. But for me, I want to know right away what NC State has under the hood. And so I think it's exciting more than anything else to see Tennessee and Clemson in a span of 3 weeks.
Well, I will say, though, I think what'll help you as well is if that game's in Gainesville, Florida, because Tennessee can't win in Gainesville to save their life.
Unfortunately, it won't be in Florida. It's in Charlotte, but that would be very funny if we can move the game.
Well, it'll definitely help. I mean, I'm not going to quit ragging on Tennessee for losing in Gainesville. I mean, hey, Vols, y'all want me to quit ragging on you? Stop losing in Gainesville. Stop it. But I see a little ACC After Dark on October 19th at Cal, and I see you got to go to Georgia Tech on Thursday night, the week before rivalry week.
Yeah, it's certainly a fun little wrinkle seeing a couple California teams that are conference games here. It probably will never feel normal, I guess you could say, but I do think it's interesting that in the first year of them joining the ACC, we have to play Cal. We have to play Cal and Stanford. We don't see SMU, but I think we see them a couple of years down the road. So it'll be interesting to see them go cross country all the way out to Cal and try and pick up a win. It'd be our first taste of, I guess, West Coast football in quite some time. So that's going to be interesting to see. And then, yeah, Georgia Tech there on a Thursday night. You talk about potential trap games. I think in the minds of a lot of NC State fans, that's one you start thinking about. And I've said already that NC State stuff is dead, so maybe the confidence will be restored in going down there to Atlanta. But yeah, I mean, Georgia Tech, I think they're probably on the upswing down there. I think there's a lot of promise, a lot of optimism that they are starting to figure things out down there. So I'm expecting a tough game, certainly in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see this game and whatever the Amazon Prime game will be on that night. I'll be making sure to flip between both.
Right. Yeah. I tell you what, if NC State has a very impressive record at that point in the season there, late November, we might pull the majority of the viewers, but I don't know. NFL typically is king.
Well, I'll watch both of them. So that's the way I look at it.
Problem solved.
But for 2024, I noticed that you guys have Wake Forest, Duke, North Carolina, and I know that Clemson is not going to be that annual opponent, which,
yeah,
on the one hand, I'm kind of like, man, I'm a sucker for college football rivalries, so it's just
yeah, I am too, man. I tell you what, it is when that came out months ago, and we saw that Clemson was not in our annual ACC pod, I guess you could call it. A lot of us were disappointed, and there is a bit of a rivalry there in football. It's the Textile Bowl. We do play for a trophy every season, so we are certainly sad to see that go. A lot of NC State fans, we love playing Clemson, and even though we haven't had a whole lot of success against them, obviously in the last decade because of the dominant run that they've been on, we love the challenge every year of playing Clemson. And for NC State fans, well, they love going down there to Death Valley. It is one of the coolest atmospheres in all of college football. So having a chance to go down there every other year has been a treat for a long time. And, it's certainly a bit irritating to see that go by the wayside for more money for networks, I guess, with the ACC expanding. So it is a little bit disappointing, but I mean, more often than not, we're still going to get to see them pretty regularly.
Well, with all this expansion going on, how does this ACC Clemson lawsuit affect NC State in any way?
Well, I'll tell you what, a lot of NC State fans have been asking Kenton and I on Locked on Wolfpack, and it's been kind of difficult to map out what this might look like for NC State. And before winning this conference championship in basketball and getting to the Final Four, up to that point, NC State athletics really didn't have much to show for the last 3 decades in the major sports, being football, basketball, and baseball somewhat. And because that is what is moving majority of realignment. It's football. There's no doubt about it. And so for NC State kind of just now getting on, the upswing in football, a lot of NC State fans are a little bit nervous. They don't want to be left behind, so to speak. They don't want to be, I guess, stuck in an ACC that may or may not be dying. And you see other teams like Clemson or Florida State or potentially North Carolina moving on to what they perceive to be greener pastures. But the thing about NC State that I think is maybe overlooked, and again, I do know that football is driving the majority of this, in the non-revenue sports, NC State has been extremely impressive the last 4 or 5 years. And I understand, of course, that does get overlooked quite often, but in the grand scheme of things, that does matter in a sense. I mean, you look at the Big Ten and their regulations for academics and things outside of football. It matters to other conferences. So I think the NC State brand is rising as well. And this sudden success in basketball absolutely helps with that. And so for football as well, I think success in football this year could go a really long way in the future of NC State in college sports. And the ACC at times, it certainly does feel like a sinking ship. And for, again, a lot of folks, that's cause for some anxiety about it, because NC State, we are a proud fan base and we don't want to feel like we're left behind. And, I've always kind of thought that if it were to come to a new conference, that the Big 12 makes a lot of sense for NC State. I think we have a little bit of a similar profile to other schools within that conference, but it's just, it's honestly like information overload when folks talk about realignment day in and day out. And to be quite honest with you, I really tune it out more often than not, because I just want to focus on the actual sports being played instead of the money making behind the scenes. But I do think NC State fans are a little apprehensive. They're a little nervous, but with the sudden success now, there might be more hope that maybe we do end up in greener pastures like these other schools think they will be too.
Well, I do worry about what's going to happen to some of the rivalries that are affected.
That part is a real shame. Yeah, I certainly agree with you there.
Yeah, because it's like I'm thinking about, oh no, we could lose Florida State, Miami, Duke, North Carolina. I mean, I don't think we'll lose like Duke, North Carolina, North Carolina State in basketball, but in like football, absolutely, I worry about the state of those rivalries.
Yeah, and it kind of relates to what I was talking about with us and Clemson, and it's a shame to see tradition kind of be set aside for a number of years. And I thought it was a shame to see the Pac-12 dissolve in the way that it did, because there's rivalries in that one, in that conference as well. And I think rivalries, it is truly like what makes college sports great. And to some extent, you get rivalries in the pro leagues like Yankees, Red Sox, and Cubs, Cardinals, that type of thing. But there is no true parallel. College sports and the pageantry and the rivalry, it makes it so special. And so for, I guess the people with big pockets making or calling the shots now and setting aside tradition, it's a shame. It really is a shame. And I hope for NC State they can maintain, I guess, the majority of the rivalries, at least as often as they can, even if that does look like a non-conference game against UNC. I still want to see that type of thing, because for folks in this region, it matters. It matters. And we don't really have pro teams in North Carolina outside of the Hornets and the Canes. And so for college fans in this state, the pageantry of the rivalry is so vital. And we desperately do not want to see that be washed away.
I hope it doesn't either, but we'll wait and see what happens. I'll make sure not to fret too much, because I do tend to worry from time to time. But for those that are looking at 2024 NC State football, what are the strengths and weaknesses to look out for?
Well, the strengths, I believe, should be the offense. And that's funny to say after last year because for the first 5-6 weeks, the offense was virtually non existent. And so it was refreshing to add the firepower that we did from the transfer portal with guys like Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina. And you picked up running back Jordan Waters from Duke, who I think he could be a game changing addition this year. And then another guy folks are really, really excited about is young wide receiver Noah Rogers that we picked up from Ohio State. You might not know the name because he didn't play at all at Ohio State, but he is a local kid. He's from Raleigh, and he is one of the most highly touted wide receiver prospects to ever come out of this state. And so for us to reel him back into NC State, we really feel like this thing could go. And our offensive coordinator, Robert Anai, he feels like a bit of a mad scientist or a genius in a sense. And I think the latter half of last season in 2023, where we did rattle off those 5 wins and the offense was kind of reworked, a lot of the credit has to go to Anai. And so for all of these new pieces to be coming in with wide receivers and new running backs and a new quarterback, some new offensive linemen, I think if it all clicks the way we hope that it will, the offense could be very impressive here. And I said that's funny because, the last couple of years, the defense has been what the strength is. And you lose a guy like a Peyton Wilson, who is one of one. He is completely irreplaceable in every sense of the word. So the defense, you expect perhaps it takes a bit of a step back, but the defensive coordinator and Tony Gibson, he's one of the top defensive coordinators in the country. And I don't know if he gets enough love for that either. So you put all your hope and all your faith and all your trust in Tony Gibson to produce another stellar NC State defense. But I think unquestionably the offense is really what all the buzz is about here in Raleigh.
Well, I will say though, the fact that we see Grace McCall at NC State, I mean that means he's going to get some more wins, and he'll get noticed more, like kind of like how Phillip Rivers did and Russell Wilson. I mean, who knows? We could see Grace McCall at, somebody get him in a top spot in the 2025 NFL draft.
You never know, man. I mean, I think that's one of the most underrated things about the transfer portal is you see guys from what are perceived to be smaller schools and they decide to take that leap to a P5, whether it's ACC or Big Ten or SEC, and your life can change in literally 1 year. If you put together one stellar year, you're getting all of a sudden looks from the NFL. And if you continue on that trajectory, yeah, things change in the blink of an eye for you. So for Grayson McCall, yeah, it's a very exciting opportunity. And he is a winner. He won a lot of football games down at Coastal. He threw for a lot of touchdowns, threw for a lot of yards. And we're hoping that translates well here at the ACC level at NC State. But NC State fans are some of the most passionate in the country. And sure, I do come across as biased in saying that, but I think if you're witnessing what this basketball team is doing, you kind of start to see what I'm talking about. NC State fans are unparalleled in terms of passion because we've waited so long to celebrate in this manner. And so all of these new guys joining the football program and what's perceived to be the most anticipated season ever, the smallest bit of success for them early in the season, they're going to feel that support in every way they can. The football, Carter Finley, the football stadium sells out every game without question. They're loud, they're proud, and they want to see our guys win. So, yeah, I mean, the bringing success to NC State in 2024, the players will feel it. They will feel it. They'll feel the appreciation and the national attention. They'll feel all of it. So it's very exciting to be a part of the NC State football team right now.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with NC State football for 2024. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what NC State brings in the Final Four. I mean, personally, I'll be pulling for them against Purdue.
I appreciate that, man. Anyone that wants to jump on the NC State bandwagon, we got room for you. We have waited 41 long years to get back to the Final Four. And now that we're back, we want all the support we can get. So, Jackson, if you want to be a State fan for this weekend, you better throw on some red, buddy. You're one of us.
I appreciate it. And, as we wrap up episode 30 of the Jacksonian, for those who want to talk a little bit about NC State football or basketball or talk a little bit about Red Sox baseball with you, where
Hey
can they
now.
find you?
Yeah, man. I'm on Twitter at gboone_ or on also on Twitter, Locked On Wolfpack. I'm primarily doing all the tweeting for that as well. So any thoughts you have about NC State, myself and my co-host Kenton, we'd be happy to answer them for you. You can find us on YouTube at Locked On Wolfpack. We love, one of our favorite things about doing the podcast is interacting with people. So we really pride ourselves on responding to each and every comment that we get on all of our videos. And every Friday, actually, we do a Fan Friday segment where we'll pick through all the comments from the week. We'll pick our favorites out and we'll talk about them live on air. So if you're watching this and you want some questions answered about NC State, go back through our videos this week where there's obviously going to be another one posted as well on Thursday and Friday. We do one every single day. Any thoughts, any questions you got, comment in our videos. I'll be sure to see it and respond. And who knows, you could end up on our show.
Well, and on this link, you can, that last link, that's nets to ets.com/locked_on_wolfpack. That's where you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast.
Yep. YouTube, you name it. Amazon, anything you can listen to a podcast on, we are on, and we're able to be found on there.
There we go. Check out Grayson Boone and Kenton Gibbs as they give you some of the best takes on NC State football, basketball, and all kinds of sports in North Carolina State history.
We do our best, man.
Well, and as for me, you can check me out right here on YouTube at Jackson Johnson 979. And I am 188 subs away from 500. And I can't get there without your help, guys. So I'll need all the help I can getting to 500 subs. And you can also check me out running my mouth on twitter.com/@Jackson09960335 and on Instagram and Threads at Jackson Johnson 543908. So
Jackson, I'll help you right now. Any NC State fans that are listening to this podcast, subscribe. Jackson has earned it. He does a phenomenal job on this podcast. I can't thank you enough for having me on. This is a great time. But NC State fans, rally around Jackson here because this weekend, he's a Wolfpack fan. He's supporting us in the Final Four. We need to support him as well.
I appreciate it, Grayson. I thank you so much. And I thank you so much, NC State Nation. I appreciate it. And as for all of us, we wish you all a very good evening and to stay safe, stay warm, stay away from that rain. You're going to get sick. There's a reason why our teachers told us as kids, do not be going outside in the rain. So long, everybody.